Good morning. My name is Mackenzie Merrick, and I'm an account manager at Infinity Benefit Solution. Today's webinar covers what is a census and why it is important. Today we will be covering what is a census and why it is important. There will be many topics that will be able to explain why it is important to have a census for your medical renewal. An employee census may look different for all employers as there's hundreds of employee templates that could be used. A census is used by insurance companies to quote preliminary rates based on the data that is included in the census. It will not include health status, race, religion, sexual orientation, social security numbers, or U.S. citizenship and immigration status, as those factors cannot be used to calculate base rates by the insurance companies. At Infinity, as your broker, we will provide you with a template that you can use to complete a census and then update each year. A standard census will include the first 4 bullet points. This census would be used for quoting lines of insurance that the plan's rates are not based on the employee's salary, for example, group disability. It is important to include every person currently enrolled in the plan, which includes spouses and children. It is also important to remember any active COBRA participants. While they may no longer be employed with your company, they are still on the plan and should be included on the census. It would be important to note that they are COBRA and not an active employee. If you do not have a census that was completed previously that you could easily update, your payroll company may be able to pull a census for you that includes all the information needed for a census. Another option would be to have your employees update their own information. You can do this via paper forms or online forms. This is not the best option, as a lot of employees tend to take a while to get you the forms back, and normally getting a census to the carriers is time sensitive to be able to get base rates for the plans and then to make an informed decision for your employer. If you have an employer-sponsored life plan, the carrier portal may have a census you can download from there. If the plan doesn't cover dependents, it wouldn't have that information, which you would then have to add that information to the census. If you keep a copy of the previous year's census, your medical carrier portal could help you update the census. They may have an option that lists all employees and their dependents info, or you can pull the most recent invoice and update the census by comparing the census to the invoice. I caution using the invoice because any changes that took place once the invoice was generated would not be captured. You would want to double check any previous enrollments or terminations that took place since then are also reflected on the census. Best practice would be to update your census quarterly, as that allows you to audit your enrollment and terminations on a more timely manner and catch any mistakes that could have been made at the time that those were processed. If you do not have a copy of the previous year census, your broker should be able to provide you with a copy. Having competitive benefits is one of the most important tools when recruiting and retaining employees. As you can see from this graphic, 87% of employees consider their employer-sponsored benefits to be extremely important to them, and it's easy to see why. Without an updated and accurate census each year, you may be missing out on reduced premium costs if the overall population of your group is pretty healthy. From a compliance standpoint, it is important that your broker get an accurate picture of how many employees you have and are enrolling on the plan, so they can make sure you are aware of any compliance-related requirements that you may not have been subject to previously. For example, at 20 employees, it is important to pay attention to that change due to having to offer COBRA as opposed to state continuation. And then again at 50 employee mark, as there are other certain compliance regulations you would also need to be made aware of. Without a census, we cannot get base rates from competing carriers, which would allow us, as your broker, to advise the route best suited for you as the employer. Many of you have renewals during the October to February timeframe, and that is the busiest time for carriers. Having the census before your renewal is released allows us to be able to start the process with competing carriers early enough that by the time your renewal is released, that should be the last piece they need to get us base rates and to get those to us in a timely manner. This puts us ahead of the game and allows time for you as the employer to make an informed decision once we present all your options. In the past, to get fully underwritten rates, employees had to fill out health history questionnaires, example, form fire. Recently, carriers have started to offer underwritten quotes just from an employee census and other various reports we would supply to the competing carriers. This varies per carrier and on the size of the group. It has been a nice development for employers because having employees fill out health history questionnaires has been a struggle for many reasons. Even though rates from carriers are considered final after either the health questionnaires are filled out or they use the employee census to provide the final rates, there is a possibility that the rates could change if the carrier identifies that there are numerous additions after the census was submitted. For example, if you have COBRA participants that were not included on the census and you have to add them once the final rates were determined, they could make a rate change at that time. That is why including those COBRA participants on the census is very important. This concludes today's webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at the information on this slide. Have a great day.